Welcome everybody who's new to the group this week. Welcome everybody who's been here for a long, long time. Hope you guys are having a good Saturday morning. Danny and Randall, how are you guys today?
Yeah,
Good morning,
doing
doing well.
great. I would love
Nice.
to know. We're going to be talking about junior developers and stuff like that. For those
Oh
people who are
man, you
tuning
just
in
gave away
now.
the topic.
Oh, never mind. I
No,
mean, the
I'm
Not
kidding.
topic's
really,
a
though.
secret. We'll get into it later. But
Well, that's not
but
too bad.
I would love to know from everyone who's listening how long you've been coding for. When did you first get into it?
Mm,
How long have you been doing it seriously? When did you actually feel like a developer? So let us know down in the comments. It would be interesting to see.
mm. That's a
And
good
maybe
question.
what, and maybe also, what was it? When did you first start feeling like a serious developer?
Yeah. Good morning, Chris. I think maybe you should. Well, I was gonna say you should repeat that, but whatever. There's
Oh, I'll repeat it. I'll repeat it in 5 minutes.
all right. Sounds good. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
just
I
interrupt
think
in
for
5 minutes and
me,
repeat that. Sorry.
yeah. I think for
That was
me,
just for people who watch afterwards.
Morning, Bryce.
yeah. Good morning, Bryce. Um, yeah, I mean, I think for me, I've been developing seriously and non-seriously. Good morning, Frankie. Um, I would say almost for like at least like 6 or more years at this point. Probably more than that, close to like 10, believe it or not. But like that's not taking it very seriously. I would say that's dabbling. I think seriously, probably about 5 years. Um,
hmm
and I would say in terms of like when I felt, what was your question? Like when I felt a real developer?
Yeah, like so the question was, how long have you been messing around with developing? How long have you been doing it seriously? And then when did you really feel like a real developer?
Mm. I think I felt like a real developer when I built my own application from scratch. And I can tell you actually the first moment, and I think it was about like 2 years ago, and uh, maybe not even that long. I think the first moment was when I built a web application and somebody bought something from it. And I opened up Stripe and there was a purchase and I was like, "Oh my God.
Yeah.
Somebody actually that I don't know on the internet went out and bought something from my application." That was a pretty cool moment.
I was gonna
It
say, like the
felt
first time you get
like
paid
mind
too is like,
blowing.
yeah,
Yeah.
the first time you get paid for a project or something's awesome. And like,
Yeah.
but I think too, like a lot of people struggle because like I know we all felt like this. Like when you're learning, like you do feel like you hit a point where like there you don't know what else to learn, but you don't know where else to
Yeah.
go. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of fall away and lose their pace, lose their momentum. And
Totally.
it's a shame because if you kept going, you can kind of do something with it, but you need to kind of take it to the next level and do something else. Can't just
Yeah.
keep,
That's
can't just keep going through the same motions.
That's a good point. I think a lot of people kind of struggle with making projects that are valuable. Like I used to have I made a channel for learning Golang.
Hmm.
And I remember a lot of the comments would always be like, I've done the tutorials, I've done loops, I've done this, I've done that. I don't know what to do next. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think that's a big problem.
That's why I
Well, because
think,
you learn the basics, but you don't know how to put anything together to actually make
yeah.
something. Like I remember that was one of the things that frustrated me so much when we did the boot camp was like I felt like we did all this stuff, we learned all this stuff, but I still didn't know how to make anything from
Yeah.
scratch, like
You know what's
start to
funny?
finish.
Last Earlier this week, Randall and I were on a call like late after the fact, and we went back and looked at the website that we built in
Oh God,
for New
so
Camp, our
bad.
website. Dude, it looked like a website from 1995. I was
Yeah,
like,
it was so
whoa,
bad.
why is this so bad? Like,
There
why
was
did,
no style, nothing.
oh,
It
it was
was
horrible.
terrible.
It was really, really bad. I was like, wow, I cannot believe we built this. I think it was using Bootstrap too, which was not like Bootstrap's bad or anything like that. It's the same
Well,
as
Bootstrap
Tailwind
can
pretty
be
much.
good, but
Yeah,
like, but the
it was
funny thing
just
is too,
designed horribly. Yeah,
But like who chooses purple, blue, and black for like colors for a website? You
I
know?
don't know. I
it's
mean,
somebody who doesn't care because they don't care about what they're making. Well, the worst
yeah,
part is that would have been fine. Like if that was like an early project that you made on your own, that would have been fine. But the fact that like
yeah.
that was what they gave us as the project
Mhm.
to make was like made it so much worse.
Yeah, like they handheld us through that. I mean, it was mostly copy paste anyway. I looked at the code too, and I was like, we didn't write like 90% of this. It was all just
It was
copy
all
paste.
copy paste.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
But
worst
I
part. It's
think,
because they're rushing you through it so fast. You don't have a chance to like really
yeah,
get into it and like learn it either.
yeah, I think that's like a good point that you make is Bryce just said, okay, I need to change the colors on my website. He's spreading hate, Randall. Jeez.
Sorry, Brian.
It's okay, Bryce. You're still learning. This was like
We'll
a,
we'll
you know,
also show you the
boot
website,
camp
Bryce. You'll see
teaching
what we're
you how
talking
to
about.
code. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
guarantee your
more,
website looks better than the one that
yeah.
we were working on.
And the truth is, like, you can make a site that looks excellent with black, purple, and blue. That's not the problem. It styling is what it's all about, right? Like
Yeah.
there's some like very nice websites I've seen out there with AI and stuff like that that are those colors, but it's just how you style it. If you make it look like it's from 1999, then it's not going to look like a modern website. So
Also, that website, nothing had like any kind of animation or anything, or transitions or
no,
transform anything that
nothing.
would like make
Yeah,
it like smooth, you know?
Talking
yeah.
talking about boot camps. So there's a common misconception out there that our web dev incubator is a boot camp, which
Mm,
I should just dispel completely right now. This is not a boot camp
spell it
because
away.
okay, let me dispel it. Because basically what boot camps do is they want to take the maximum amount of your money in the shortest period of time and then get you out the door and be like, see ya.
Yeah.
Well, the web dev incubator is actually a mentoring or coaching type program. So it benefits students who are just learning coding, but also those who have already been through boot camps all the way through.
Hmm.
And we basically help you figure out how to integrate what you've learned with actual real world projects so that you can actually feel like a developer and then go get jobs as developers or create your own apps and then you don't have to get a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that that brings me back to the point that I was trying to make before, which was, when it comes to like what makes you feel like a developer, I think it does come down to understanding all the pieces that will fit together to build a full web app. And like what Danny was saying, he found work and had to build something from scratch. The first money that I ever got paid as a developer was doing low code like websites, right? Using Squarespace to build a company a website. And that felt great, but I didn't really feel like a full-on developer yet because I wasn't building it from pieces and using modern technology. And so I think that definitely plays a role in it, right? It was like, do I understand everything from creating the design to how the data is going to move around the web app to using a modern framework to using a database, using authentication, those sort of things. And that I think when that all came together and then I got paid on top of that because somebody felt like whatever I built was value, that was like definitely a crowning moment. So maybe you can ask that question again so people can write in the comments.
All right. So now, for anybody who's watching out there, we love to hear your input. As a matter of fact, we're soon going to be rewarding people for contributing the most.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually this week we're going to poll to see what type of things you want. So if there are certain things you think would be valuable for the rising contributors, particularly, let us know in that poll later this week. But the question was, let us know down in the comments how long you've been coding for, how long you've been coding seriously for, if you are, and when you started to feel like a real developer, if you even have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'll
And
it's
share my
great.
story.
yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
I started coding when I was 19 years old in university, studying physics. They made us learn coding, so I learned C and C++. Didn't understand a thing about it. Had a uh, had to do senior research with a professor in chaos theory. His stuff was in Fortran, so I had to learn Fortran. Learn it enough to put it on,
Quotation marks on that
learn it
one.
enough to put it on my resume. And I
Yeah.
was literally the only person in probably 30 years who had Fortran on their resume because it was gone in like the 1980s. And so I ended up getting a job for a government organization doing coding. Still didn't feel like a developer back then. Felt totally like 100% imposter syndrome completely.
Mm.
And yeah, it wasn't until starting to do stuff on my own. And even now, because I'm doing more of like the cybersecurity, information security angle of it. So there's a whole bunch of uh, code that I have to look at on a regular basis, usually like C or PHP or different stuff like that. And I think I definitely feel more like a developer because I can read the code, I can figure out what it's doing. But yeah, it's always a struggle between like coding is something where there's always so much to know, and it's hard to really know like, do I know this or am I still an imposter?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
That's a good point.
I think honestly, for even the most senior developers, I think that's like sort of a misconception, something that I see a lot. And we talked about this recently with like Bryce and some other people in the group is there's this thing that happens in software development where senior developers try to shame junior developers. And to me, that's like the lamest effing thing possible because the reason why they do that is because they
They're nerds
want
with no social skills.
they're nerds with no social skills, but also they just want like other people to not get into this field because it makes it harder for them to work in this field because they become less senior if there's other people who understand things.
And
And the
because they
reality,
generally don't change. Like
exactly.
the ones who shame, they just stick to the same thing and they do it over and over again. They're afraid
Yeah.
of it going
And
away.
and the reality is in this field, number one, nobody was born an expert, right? Everybody started from zero. Everybody. Right? Everybody had to go through all the struggles and all, build up their chops, in other words, as a developer. Um, and so, yeah, like it's weird. Like these senior developers try to tear down junior developers, but it's like you had to start from somewhere, right?
But
Everybody
I
got the
think part, oh, I
impossible to
think
know everything.
no,
Go
it
ahead.
is. Yeah, no, there's so much to learn. I think part of it too with with the senior developers that do that, because I don't think all of them do, but there are a lot that definitely do. They're also the ones that seem to be kind of fixed in their ways.
Yeah.
And like I think they also kind of, because you see all these younger people, there's so much new tech. I mean, you see how much new stuff coming out constantly. We constantly are getting bombarded by new tools, new things. I was just sharing with you guys that IDX project from Google that just came out. It's
Yeah.
like there's always new frameworks, new tools, new stuff, and I think that can be scary if you're not if you're not committed to like lifelong learning. And I think maybe that is part of it. They feel like either threatened or, who knows, buy
Yeah.
it and they
I
just want to
mean,
put people down.
like we had there was somebody in the group and I won't name their name. They're not in the group anymore. We removed them, but they were in the group for quite some time and we had to remove them last week because somebody made a really good post about how they were just getting into development and they wanted to learn something. They were looking for other people to like give them encouragement or show them a direction or whatever. And this person came in as a first comment, it lurked in the group, never commented on anything, has been in the group for months, and then all of a sudden was like, I'm a senior developer. There's no reason to get into this field. AI can code everything. But like, if you understood AI and the abilities of AI, and you're a quote senior developer, you would very much understand that there is plenty of room in this field, right? In fact, the whole idea of AI is built by software developers. There would be no AI without software developers, and there will be a continuous need for them. That's like saying, there's no need for accountants because there's calculators in the world. Like that's not how
Hmm.
it works, right?
Yeah.
It's like so, but yeah, that's just a trend that I've seen so much in this field, and so to get I just want to jump into the comments really quick just to say a few things, and then we'll get into the actual topic of today's video because we're almost like halfway through. So I just want to read some of these. So Chris said he's seriously uh, for 6 months, but he's had a GitHub since 2015. So I think that's like a very common thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Um, Eric said, "Oh man, these comments are coming so quick. I can't even read them." Bryce said, all seriousness, I took Fortran in college, but didn't do any coding
Huh.
since then, 1996-ish, until just recently. I started coding Python in February 2024, started coding HTML and CSS in April, and started JavaScript in May. I've built a few apps, so while I don't feel like a developer yet, I feel like a huge difference. And this is something like Bryce and I had a conversation about how he had a review in the boot camp that he's also in, and they were sort of just knocking him down on like not understanding
Mhm.
JavaScript. And it's like, dude, I think you had this conversation with him too, Danny. Is like, you've only been in it for like a month and a half. Like, how
You've
do
been
you,
doing JavaScript for less than a month and a half.
yeah, like,
Yeah, I
dude,
mean, like,
you can't compare yourself to somebody who's been doing it for 5 years. It just doesn't
well,
equate, right?
actually, I'll give you an analogy that works. This is from college, and Randy knows this one. I
I
remember,
like this story.
yeah, I was working on my thesis for philosophy, right? So reading all these books and stuff, studying real hard, doing all this work, and I was meeting with my advisor, who he's about. He had to. I mean, I was younger at the time, so he seemed probably older, but I'll say he was like probably in his 60s.
Yeah.
Um, really smart guy. And I was like, I just don't understand. Like, you seem to understand this so easily. It like takes nothing. And he started laughing. I was like, what are you laughing about? Like, this is serious. And he's like, I'm like, however many decades, multiple times your age. He's like,
Yeah.
I've had all this time to read. And he's like, this is what I've been doing for all that time is studying this
Yeah.
stuff, reading this stuff, thinking about it. He's like, so obviously, yeah, I know it better than
Yeah.
you. He's like, but when you're my age, and you've done this for that long, you'll be there too. It's like, and it is
Yeah.
kind of funny. Like we forget, we expect ourselves to be like instantly this perfect, advanced person who's been as if we've been doing it for our whole lives, when the
Yeah.
reality is we haven't been. And so you need
I
to
think,
keep that in mind. I think that also goes to the comment from Frankie about like perfectionism, right? Like we
yeah,
stress ourselves out that we're not good enough, but the reality is like, but you're doing it and you're gonna get
exactly.
there. It just takes
And
time.
and you just keep doing it. And that is the perfectionism, right? Don't have perfectionism in the actual work, but have perfectionism in your consistency. That's really where you should put your perfectionism. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that's just a fact of the generation that we live in now, where we're able to see people who have amazing success, but we can't see any of the story before that. And so it's, happens in software development too. You see people who are incredible software engineers, but you don't see any of the struggles that they went through. And I promise you, every single person who is great at software development, software engineering, they sucked horribly at some point. Like really, really bad. They sucked really bad. And that's okay, right? Because they just kept pressing through it and they were like, they had faith in the end goal and kept pressing forward. So
That's an interesting point because now we compare ourselves with pretty much the whole entire world. We can look on
yeah,
any of these social media and we're like, oh, this guy, he's way younger than me. He did so much more than me. But it's like if you actually consider like who in your town is better at this than you, you'd be like, don't know. I don't think anyone else even does it. And like that's what things were
yeah,
like before before social media, where you were just
yeah,
like, I'm the only person who really knows this is my town, so I guess I'm doing pretty
Yeah.
good.
yeah, totally. That's actually a really good point. Well, now that we're more than halfway through the episode, I want to introduce the topic
Yay.
of today's episode, which is going beyond junior and how to level up your coding skills. So, you may have just gone through boot camp, you may be still learning, you may be self-paced, whatever it is. Um, you're going to get to a point where you feel comfortable calling yourself a developer, right? And you may even start applying for jobs. And that's at the point when you would be considered, I guess, a junior developer. And we were sort of joking about this before. Why is there no like freshman or sophomore developer? And I guess in some
They
cases,
s-
while you're
they
learning,
save that for when you get demoted.
Yeah.
You start
yeah,
a junior,
yeah,
and if you're
yeah,
really bad, you're just
yeah.
like you're a sophomore. If you're terrible,
Get
you're
out
like
of
you're a freshman.
And if you're even worse, you become an intern, and that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Um, so what we want to talk about today is how to sort of separate yourself from the typical junior developer, right? Because I think the idea of a junior developer is somebody, that can't do a lot on their own. They need a lot of assistance from senior developers. And so they end up doing the sort of, menial work or um,
Boilerplate, you know.
boilerplate stuff, getting coffee, things like that. Um, and so, well, what I think we want to talk about today is how do you actually make your code better so that you're not considered a junior developer and sort of stand out from the rest of the field if you're new to software development or new in the field of software development. So I have a couple, like a list of different things that I wrote down.
Let's just
And we
get
can,
into it.
yeah, and we can go through them and you guys can give your opinion on them. So the first one that I wrote on the list was writing clean code, right? And I know that's like a very um, junior dev assistant to the AI. Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
This is Chris. Um, so I think the first one, clean code, is sort of like this broad topic, right? That brings up a lot of different things. So do you guys have an idea of what you consider clean code?
Well, you make a good point because there are two books by Microsoft. One is called Clean Code, and another is called Writing Secure Code.
Hmm.
And I think those are books that any developer should pick up because those are like best practices. So like
Yeah.
you can learn code from all over the place, and people do. But like if you really want to know the best practices from a company that's been around for a long time that focuses on writing clean and secure code, these are probably the resources that you should use.
Nice. Yeah, Bryce says he has both of them. That's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
I would
Yeah.
say too, I would say with clean code, it's like readable code. Code that you can go
Yeah.
back to and understand that other people can understand. That means like there's comments in it. And I think one thing I think that everybody can do that's really valuable is go back on your old projects and redo them
Yes, I
and
think
do
that's a
them
great
better.
idea.
Because
Yeah.
the nice thing about that is you already know the project, you know what you want to do, and see how much better you can make it, how much you can refactor the code, how much you can not repeat yourself, how you can change things and make it just improve it and write comments so that you're just constantly sort of redoing and sort of building on these things and making them better and better.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think you could really dig into clean code on its own for a long time. To me, there's a
Yeah,
couple of things it means. It's really just commenting your code, thumbs upping, because I'm
there you
getting
go.
thumbs up right now. Commenting your code, making sure that you have separation between the actual like visual design and the logic of your code. I think that's a huge one, especially when you
Yeah.
get into JavaScript frameworks. It's easy to sort of start mixing that stuff up and it makes your code harder to read. Um, and generally just writing concise code, like not overwriting code, but then also on the opposite end, not abstracting code too much, making it too confusing for people to read, because ultimately, as a developer, you work in teams. And so you need to be able to have other people read your code as well.
Well, one thing you have to imagine too is imagine working for a company, right? Like where people might be working on the same project for years, decades,
Yeah.
maybe more. And so the person that maybe wrote it might be gone. So
Yeah.
other people need to be able to come on, they need to be able to understand this thing and they need to be able to participate with it. So yeah, I think that's huge. Like being able to understand somebody else's code is important in reading it. And so yeah.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can get to clean code is by writing code. And this, I think, stops a lot of
Yes.
people because they're like, I don't
Yeah.
know how to do it right. I don't know how to make this perfect. I'm not good enough yet. And so they just don't write any code. So, like, the
Yeah.
only way you can get to clean code is by writing terrible code first and then doing what Danny was saying, refactoring it over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And refactoring is not something you even only do just when you're like a junior developer. It's like when you're
No.
building a project, as you're maintaining the code, you naturally refactor it because you're going to add features to it that will require refactoring. And that just means like cleaning up your code, making it more readable, abstracting things away. Like if you have, you know, 30 buttons on your site, you don't style every button. You create a button and
Yeah.
then you just place that button on your site. That's
Well,
refactor.
like too, I think the other thing with refactoring too, when you're actually developing for clients, is a lot of times when you first build like a quick mock-up of something, you're doing it fast, and
Yes.
you just want to show them it, and then you need to go back and clean it up because usually that's kind of a mess because you've just done it so quickly, and that's where you go in and then clean up and take those buttons and make it one button instead of 30, things like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. Like I had a friend of mine say this once, and this is a great way of sort of analogy of this is when you first build a mock-up, you're basically building a project with tape and magnets, right? You're like putting it together with tape and magnets, and then you go back and you refine it and you like build it from the ground up with like bricks. That's what it's all what refactoring and clean code is about. Um, okay. Anything else? I got a whole list
Nice.
here. So okay,
Nice.
the next
Keep
one
going.
is what Bryce is saying is I comment everything, and that's commenting on code, right? I think that's very important. And I think there's also like a boundary here of too much commenting versus too little commenting. I think you need a comment to just explain what's going on in the code and help people understand, okay, what this function is doing or what this part
What
of the
does it
code.
return? Yeah, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
When you're writing, when you're using like modern frameworks like Java, like React or Next.js or something like that, I think a lot of the visual aspects should be self-explanatory in your um, file naming. So, like, if I'm building a nav bar, I don't just like write header, I write like nav bar. Or if it's like a card component, I'm not just writing like card, I'm writing the type of card component. So it could be like a, I don't know, like product card or something like that. I think that's, the visual components can be explained well, but yeah, adding comments to, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think for anybody that's learning, I think a good practice too is go through somebody else's code and comment it.
Yeah.
Anything you don't understand, figure it out, research it, and comment what it's doing, so that you also learn how to read code. That also teaches you
Yes.
too what kind of comments you need regularly for people to understand, which is not a lot. You just need to explain what's going on, what it is, so that when you go back to it, it makes sense. I think another good habit too with comments is to do comments. Putting in comments about
Yeah.
features you want to add, things you need to still do to make the app finish, so that when you go back, you know exactly where you are in your project and you can clean it up and fix it.
Yeah. I would add this too, and I think this is something that I don't even do all the time, to be honest, which is um, creating really high quality README files,
Yeah.
right? When you make a project, and a README file is a markdown file that just tells other
Yeah.
developers and basically other people what your file, like what your product does, right? What your project or your package does and how to install it, how to handle different things, like do different things inside the package. So, and that's, that takes a lot of time. And that's why I think a lot of developers skip over that. But it is super helpful when you are a developer and you're going to look at somebody else's code. If you have that information to look at, it's super helpful. Do you have something
Yeah.
you want to comment, Randall?
No, I just had a brilliant idea. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay, cool. Next one is version control. And I think this one's a
Yeah.
big one because when you become a junior developer and you want to advance to a senior developer, you have to prove to other people that you are qualified. And part of that proving to somebody else is working on a team. And version control is very big in teams, right? So when I say not virgin, version control.
Yeah, version control is just be a programmer. You're guaranteed never to get
Yeah,
laid.
yeah,
But
for real. So version control is using things like GitHub, or really it's Git and GitHub. There's other options besides GitHub, but that's the most
Bitbucket,
common one.
yada yada.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's
GitHub
a
is the
bunch of them.
dominant though. I mean, every pretty much
Yeah.
uses that. So
But yeah, understanding how to use Git, right? That's super important because I actually watched a video the other day. I've been using Git for a long time now, but I saw a video that was like, explaining Git like a 5-year-old, and it was a good video because it was number one, it wasn't like scripted. It was like just off the seat of his pants, like just explaining it like whatever. And he explained it like saving a video game, and I thought it was a good analogy because
yeah.
um, seems like this very complex creature to sort of handle. Um, and so it was really good because it just explained, the basic commands of Git. So you got to understand the basic commands, but then also if you want to be a senior developer, you're in charge of handling code and like merges and pull requests and all that stuff. So the better you can get with Git and GitHub, um, it will actually make you look very senior. If you understand how to use Git and GitHub like the back of your hand, you will make people's jaws drop for real.
You can also start, yeah, and I mean, if you're working by yourself too, and you're using frameworks and stuff, or like something like Firebase or something to host your app, you can start using Git Actions too to even do
Yeah.
auto deploys and stuff. And that's getting into the more advanced
Yeah.
Git stuff. But at the core, you definitely need to know how to create repos, push to repos, create new branches, and you should work on merging. But that's all stuff you can do yourself too and practice over and over again. It's really not hard. It just takes time to learn it. That's
Yeah.
all it
It's
is.
it's a lot of muscle memory.
It's like
Um,
everything else in coding, right?
yeah, exactly. All right, moving on because I got a few more and we're pretty much at the end, but
Oh
um
yeah.
the ones I have are handling errors gracefully. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily do. They just console log errors, and that's not really a good like user experience, right?
Mm-mm.
Is that if a user has an experience and you're just console logging something, they're not going to see it. So they're just going to keep clicking that button and something's not going to work. So how to handle errors. Go ahead, Danny, you want
I
to
was
add?
gonna say you also don't you want to make sure you are handling errors too, because something in
Yeah.
production you don't want an error to pop up because it'll give them a ton of information that they could then use to attack your system, right? So like
Yes.
handling errors is crucial. So learning try catch or
Yeah.
try what is it in
Except
Java?
Try
Yeah,
catch.
that's yeah, okay, try catch. Yeah. I was thinking I always get confused Python and JavaScript because they're
Yeah.
slightly different. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So like using try catch blocks and then actually handling errors that you catch in a way where you're presenting useful data to the user and concealing any information that's not
I
for
think
their eyes.
Jerry's point is very much I think what a lot of new developers do, which is you're working by yourself. So you have a branch that you're working on. You don't create new branches because you just make sure the
Yeah.
code works, then you push it, right? But
Yeah.
start trying to create feature branches.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this. I'll create a new branch for that feature, do the code, then push it up and then merge it. And that way you start practicing that process.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a good way to just handle like the
Yeah.
version control of your application is I know.
yeah,
It's
get your
all this
mind.
coffee, man.
Yeah.
No, but it is a
Can't
good
tell.
way to like sort of handle building an application because naturally you're going to build sort of the core of your application, which is like your main branch, your MVP, and then you're going to start adding features to it. And so you can build out feature branches, which is what you're going to do in a work environment anyway. You're not going to be working on the main branch pretty much ever because that's reserved for production. So, um, yeah, just get used to building those feature branches.
Yeah.
Dude, these virgins are out of control. We gotta get
They're
some
just
virgin
out of
Yeah.
control
control.
in.
Yeah, we need some virgin
Control.
virgin control in here. Oh man. All right. The next one I have is code abstraction. So, actually yesterday I was talking to some of the guys inside the private Telegram group inside our web dev incubator,
Which
and
is not a boot camp. It's actually a mentoring coding program for anybody who's
Yes.
interested. Because boot camps,
correct.
but
Yeah,
coaching
like
mentoring gets you where you want to
in
go.
your boot camp, are you going to have three mentors that you can reach out to 24/7 and get an answer within minutes? No. And that's what
Are
we
you
do.
going to be able to work on passion projects that are important to you? No.
No. Yeah, there's just a lot that's different and it's hard for us to sort of explain all that without you guys being inside of it. So if you want to try it out, we do have a 30-day guarantee. If you don't love it within 30 days, let us know and we'll give your money back. So you can try it pretty much for free for 30 days. And that guarantee, I'm pretty sure we're getting rid of once we go to the you know live
When we're out of beta.
non-beta. Yeah. So
Which is soon. So actually, yeah, the price
which
is
is
gonna go up
yeah.
and yeah,
So
lots
if
gonna
you are
change.
sort of on the fence, now's a good time to think about it. But anyway, back to what I was saying is in the private Telegram, I think it was Bryce was talking about how he's working on this project and he's like, I know how to use forms, but I didn't actually think about like how to handle this data and like how to move this data around my application. And I was like, oh, cool, perfect. We'll work on that today in our mentoring group. So that's another like awesome thing is like anything that you're working on where you're like, I'm stuck, you just get us to help you with it, right? Anything that you want to work on. So today we're working on that, and I want to show everybody two different options, or actually a couple different options to handle data and show some of like the code abstraction, right? So code abstraction means instead of writing every little thing in every little instance, I can sort of abstract away from that and make something that's more general but applies to every situation. So sort of the example that I was using before is a button. Like if you have a button on your website, generally you're going to have more than one button on a website, especially like a web app, right? But you want all those buttons to be styled the same. So do you create a button and then style every single button the same way and write code for every single button? No, you make like a button component, style that once, and then use that all over. And then the abstraction is you abstract away what that button says and the function that it does, right? So the component might take in a name for like the text of the button and like a callback function that actually performs some action when the button is pressed. And so that way we don't write as much code. It's a lot cleaner and clearer for people to see how that thing functions.
And when
Um,
you have to update something, you only have to change one component, not
exactly.
every file in the thing, which is a
Yeah.
pain in the ass. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, could
it's
you imagine if you had like every button on Facebook? Could you imagine that? Like Mark Zuckerberg's like, all right, we're changing all the buttons to blue today, and every button was different. So somebody had to go in and change every button out there. No,
oh
it doesn't
God.
work that way. That would suck. All right.
That would be a pain in the butt. And
Yeah,
Yeah, it
it
would.
would be a pain in the butt.
But I think I have like a sound for that somewhere on
wah wah.
here. Oh man. All right. Let's see. The next one I have is working on teams, and I think this is a huge one. That it's a little bit tough to get this experience, especially if you're on your own. Another reason to join in our web dev incubator because we are building projects as a team. But go ahead. Did you have something to say, Randall, or did I
Well,
just take words
I
out of your
think this
mouth?
is one of the things that's been the most impactful for all of our success combined is just having a group that we could meet with on a regular basis where we just continue to learn and we share what we learn together. And this is
Yeah.
Yeah.
something that we share with everyone in the Web Dev Incubator mentoring slash coaching program, definitely not a boot camp. And because
I
you
think
get
we should
access
just
to
put that in parentheses.
it's like the full
Web dev
name.
incubator, not a boot camp.
Definitely not.
Uh, and but yeah, it's something that you can tell because all the guys in the web dev incubator work together, and it's like
Mhm.
just the working together brings something new from everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that is 100% going to be in every job you ever get as a developer is you're going to have to work with other people. So if you can figure out how to communicate better with other people, how to share code, all those things that are just required with working in a team. And if you've ever worked on any sort of team in another job, you have experience with this. It's not the easiest thing in the world sometimes, right? And software development can be even more frustrating. Like I've had frustrations this week alone because I'm working with other developers and they're not communicating well. So like when we go to actually build things, there's there's loss in translation, right? And that happens in the code too. So that just adds to more development hours. So that's something that, getting really good at from the beginning will make you stand out as a junior developer.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it does help. And I think also I was just responding to Jerry's question about, you said to create like your main branch and everything branch out you're building till it works. And the cool thing about that is when you merge stuff too, if there is a problem, Git gives you a lot of information about what's wrong.
yeah.
So that can be also a helpful way to learn when you're going. And yeah, I think, working in teams is super important as well. But I think also the biggest thing you guys can do too is just keep coding and keep
Yeah.
practicing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll answer that question by Jerry too a little bit even more. So it depends on the project you're building in terms of like main branch and other branches, other feature branches and stuff. Generally on like large projects, you'll have like a main branch and then maybe a production branch as well. And then you'll have
Or a
development
dev
branches.
production or something.
Yeah, like a
Yeah, yeah.
dev production branch. And then you'll have feature branches. So as a developer, you may be tasked with like building a particular feature. You'd build that on a feature branch, and then that would be pushed or merged into a development branch and then tested. And then once it's tested, then that might be merged into the production branch as like a new feature
Yeah,
that's
your feature could be like,
outlined.
like create the user dashboard or something, or create this
Yeah.
component or something. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
it gets
And
pushed in.
typically like I'll just, you know, uh, in case you're wondering about naming, sometimes I'll name things like feature, like the actual branch weight name would be like feature slash, and then like whatever you're calling the feature. So like feature slash, you know, wallet update or something. I don't know, whatever it is.
Usually very clear though. Yeah, I mean, clear naming
Yeah.
is important. I think that's a good convention to get into anyway with everything, whether it's you're talking about variables or comments or your file
Yeah.
names, everything should be clear and explanatory.
I think that's a really good point too, and that's part of writing clean code is like your naming convention should be very quality in terms of like they're saying what everything is doing, right? And like even functions, like sometimes like function names are like super long, but it's very clear what the function is doing just from the name, right? You don't want to just write like function like update. It's like function update user information with this, right? Something
Well,
like
and you do that because when you're working with frameworks and you're abstracting, right? Somebody might see that function called, but
right.
not necessarily know where it was written. And
Yeah.
so seeing exactly what it says, it's clear what it does.
Yeah. And
But yeah.
as Bryce said, no spaces in names. Correct. No spaces. All
All
right.
right.
We got two more. number one is project planning. So this is something, you're going to do a little bit more if you're making your own projects, but um, it's also helpful because you will, as a developer, be part of, planning for projects, even if you're a junior developer. So understanding sort of the phases of development from an idea to the actual finished product, and then planning that out because it's easy to want to sort of jump to from, okay, here's an idea to like coding it, but it will make your life a whole heck of a lot easier if you actually build a wireframe and go through user stories. And we talked about that in our web dev incubator recently, is like how to build user stories and then use that to actually build out the application. Like I know, sorry, Chris, I'm going to call you out, but um, Chris has been working on Connect 4 for a while, and the other day he was like wanting to rebuild it using some of the code that he had, some of the code that Danny wrote, and he was like, I just don't know how to do it. So we walked him through how to build user stories and then work through those user stories to actually build his MVP out. And I, can already see, and I mean, this dude has zero time on his hands, and he's still made huge progress just from that little bit. So actually planning out a project is very, very important. You guys have
Yeah.
anything to add on that?
Oh, I'd say yeah, because you understand the logic, the data, how things are going to be
Yeah.
handled ahead of time, plus the layout and what it looks like, which is a huge deal. We should
Yeah.
do
And
the last
also
one too,
also can
because
be
oh yeah,
helpful to start doing that now, and so that you can
Yeah.
understand that timelines, all things take a lot longer than you plan on them taking.
yeah,
So generally, however long you think something's going to take, it's going to take a lot longer than that. And then the more
Yeah.
people you add to it, the even longer it takes. So starting to understand that stuff now, that way it'll save you the headaches later from promising things that you can't deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and then the last one I have on my list is time management. And I think this
Wow.
is,
yeah.
uh, I know that seems so simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do as a developer because there's just all these things pulling you in a million different directions, and there never seems like there's enough time in the day. So,
That's true.
how do you guys manage your time?
Well, no social media and
It's a good one. No news
no
or
Nope.
social
news.
media.
Yeah. It's actually tricky though, because you need to give up a lot of stuff that you enjoy. Like
Yeah.
limiting the amount of time watching TV or movies, limiting the time playing games so that I can actually focus on the important stuff because I know that if I don't focus on the important stuff, it'll never get done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think a big one for me actually is knowing when to actually take a break. And I know that sounds weird with time management, but I've spent endless hours banging my head against the wall trying to solve some issue. If I had just taken a break for a little bit and come back to it, I would have
Yep.
solved it a lot faster. And so sometimes, like, it may seem like a waste of time to step away from the computer, but it's actually the best use of your time.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think like taking care of yourself, time management includes taking
Yeah.
breaks, taking walks, exercising, stuff that's good for you because that helps your mind also deal with these because all coding is problem solving. I
Yeah.
also like to have like I have scheduled times of the day where I'm going to start coding. So I think that's also good. Like I know like no matter
Yeah.
what, like at this time of day I'm going to sit down and then, do that because that gives me at least times that I know I'm going to be at my computer working every
I
day.
like that idea a lot. I think I'm going to use that. See, I one of the things that I do, which is sort of what you mentioned before, is I always prioritize fitness. Like I pretty much work out every single day. If not, I do like a walk or something, even if it's like a rest day. And that's a huge priority for me just because it, I mean, I feel better from it. Like I always feel a lot better after working out. So, um, I think for developers that can be hard to schedule in that time, but and it doesn't have to be fitness for you, but whatever your priorities are, make sure that you're making time for those things. Like another priority is like taking time to like be with family. I think that's super important. And so whatever your priorities are specifically for you. But I do think that, keeping yourself fit and your mind fit is very important as a developer as well.
All right.
Cool. Well, that's all I have for today. I know that's quite a bit
Before
that
we
we went through.
go,
Yeah,
before we
before we go.
go, I just thought that people out there should know that we have a coaching slash mentoring, definitely not a boot camp program
Yes.
called Web Dev Incubator.
Definitely not a boot camp.
It is not a boot
Yeah,
camp.
In case we didn't
we're
make that clear.
we're we're actually what we do is we help you become a better developer, move you from junior to maybe junior, intermediate, senior developer, somewhere along there so that you can start building your own projects. You can start doing things that are meaningful to you and actually gain employment and experience and all that stuff with the expertise and guidance of us three guys who you all like to hang out with every Saturday and or if you
Yeah.
watch these videos afterwards. So if you're interested in that, you can check out uh, the I don't know, Russ, tell him.
You can
Not the
comment
Russ.
below. Comment below. Um, Senior
Junior.
developer.
Okay, senior.
Yeah. Or senior.
2025.
If you can't write more than just 5 letters, you can just write senior. But if you can write out senior developer, you can write that. Um,
And we'll reach
I'm
out to
just
you.
reading. Yeah, we'll reach out to you. I'm reading Jerry's comment. How does that play in a real world environment? They expect output. Are you allowed to just get up and go for a walk if you are stuck? Yes, if you are working for a company that is quality, you are allowed to do that. I mean, if you look at like
Get a
Google or
coffee.
something,
Got
their whole mentality is based around making super comfortable environments for developers. Like they don't work in a cubicle and make and force you to sit there for 8 hours a
Aren't
day.
they the ones that have that walking trail that they built outside
Yeah,
too
they
for
have.
people to talk and like think about through problems and stuff?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they have like refrigerators full of LaCroix. They have co-working spaces with like beanbag chairs, things like that. The idea is like development is a very creative process. It's not something that just exists in code alone. Your brain needs time to sort of unwind and work through. You'd be surprised how much of actual development happens in your subconscious mind. So taking that time to sort of walk away is very important. And if your employer is not doing that, you need to use those communication skills that you're building to actually explain that to them, that you need the ability to do that in order to work better and more efficiently. And if they're an employer worth working for, they're going to understand that stuff, especially if your boss probably will be some sort of a developer as well, and they're going to understand that. If it's like
Yeah.
a C-level executive that knows nothing about development, you need to communicate that to them and say, I work more efficiently if I have the ability to go out and take a walk every once in a while. Um, but yeah,
All right.
manufacturing is probably not like that at all. I can imagine. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys. If you are interested in the Web Dev Incubator, write senior or senior developer, your choice in the comments. We'll reach out to you. We'll give you a free action call and let you know what it's all about, how you can join. And if you're on
Also,
the
the
fence,
poll coming up this week,
Yeah.
for the top contributors, definitely make sure to keep an eye out for that poll. Participate in it. Let us know what things would be meaningful and valuable for you so that you can get cool free stuff from us for
yeah,
participating.
absolutely. All right. Well, that's all I got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Randall and Danny, for being here. If you are inside the Web Dev Incubator, we will see you in about 12 or so minutes um, for our mentoring, accountability, motivational call.
All right.
Cool. See you guys in 10 and next week on Saturday.